on this computer, and I guess I am recording. Yeah.
Awesome. All right.
Okay.
Hey guys.
This is us. This is our literature middle school.
What time we got? It is 12:06.
12:06.
Awesome.
Beautiful. With Shelley Levy, Bethany Kenney, and I'm Steve Leroux.
Long Way Down.
Yeah. And we're doing Long Way Down by Jason Reynolds. It's a young, I'd say it's maybe good. It's good for secondary school, right? Yeah.
I think so.
Okay.
Yeah.
Definitely. Especially given the ending.
Gives, yeah. We'll get into that.
Right.
So Bethany, going to start off with a little bit about Jason.
So actually, Jason Reynolds had like a whole full Wikipedia page about like his early life and stuff. And he was born in Washington, D.C. His mom was a special ed teacher. His dad worked in mental health. I think he ran a mental health clinic. But it talked about how he was inspired by rap, and that kind of helped draw him towards poetry. And there was a really cool quote by him where he talked about rap's capacity for being raw and honest. For some kids, that was their life. And I feel like it really speaks to this whole course in terms of like presenting things that represent children that might not be represented in the mainstream media. He talked about his writing, how instead of going into a writing and thinking about what age he wants to reach out to, he'll just think of the character in the story and write through the character, and then whatever story he comes up with, that's what it is.
And then like that approach.
For Long Way Down, it actually like draws on his own personal experience, because he talked about how he lost a friend to gun violence at 19. And I feel like this book really processes his experience, because he talked about like his friends and him wanted to get together and go get the other guy, but it was kind of like murky in terms of they don't know who actually did it. So they ended up not doing anything. And he said he was incredibly thankful that he never got into this kind of stuff. So he's seen a lot I think he's worked in juvenile detention centers. He's worked in mental health clinics. So I think he's seen all sides of the story in terms of these things. So I'm jealous that you guys got to do George in this book, because I feel like Words on Fire was just like, I thought it was authentic at first, but then you read this and it's like, this guy like knows, he knows what's real kind of thing. So I think he's a very authentic writer.
Yeah, I think it could very relatable. Go ahead, Shelley.
I was just saying it was obvious. I think it was very apparent at reading it that now that you shared that with us, I could definitely connect this. And that it was a real life connection for him.
Right. Many awards, many bestseller stuff.
I thought it was a beautiful. Did
he have, he lost a friend, or did he lose a family member?
He said a friend at 19. I think he started writing poetry when his grandmother died, and he wrote something about her, and his mom put it in the obituary. And then that's just where he got started with writing poetry.
Wow. Somebody recognized it and said, wow, this is good. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Is this the first time you guys have read a literature book that's formatted like this?
Yeah. Other than like an epic poem in high school, but this is different, and I really liked it.
I did too.
Yeah, I did too. I definitely like the imagery. That's the word I'm looking for, of it. And I'm big on line breaks and such, and so he's very crafty with that. And I think a good poet can say a lot with just few little words. And he's done a very credible job with that.
Yeah, I feel like it's almost realer, being just like little snippets of life. Like if he used more words than he did, it would almost seem like overdone and trying too hard, but it's like just the perfect amount of text.
Yeah. I 100% agree with you, because I tried to imagine it several times. I would catch myself throughout the book trying to imagine what it would be like if it were written in just your classic literature format. And I think it was so much more effective this way. I mean, the words are so much stronger.
Right. And you have to like almost do more work as a reader to like fill in the gaps yourself, which I think is good.
Yes.
Yeah, it gives you time to think
Yeah.
about what's being said
Yeah.
too, you know.
Right.
Yeah.
And you're not like me, you get a lot, where was I? You know, you turn your head
Right.
and you're
Right.
you don't know where you're at.
Right,
And you gotta
Right.
reread
Easily
stuff over again.
followable.
Yeah,
Yes.
it was
And
very
there-
so it was a very quick read for me. I think I read it in one setting.
Yeah.
Pretty
Yeah,
much.
I took a couple.
Yeah, I think I took 2. And there are times I would read a couple pages. I mean, obviously, you know, I would process what had happened. It was like, wow, that was powerful. And I would find myself like flipping back and rereading.
You got to chew on it a little bit.
Exactly. Chew on it. I like that. Yeah.
So we have things to share out of the book.
Yes.
I kind of wanted, let's see. Who's got the one about rules? Is that Bethany again?
do.
No, that's you? Okay, perfect.
do,
Can we
yes.
start with you on that?
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure. Okay, so what are the rules? It's kind of like our process said, it's their rules of life. I mean, their rules in their world, in their culture. And of course, number 1 was do not cry, no matter what. Number 2 was no snitching, no matter what. And then number 3 was revenge. If someone you love gets killed, find that person who killed them and kill them. Short and sweet. And, you know, I kind of interpreted these rules as like the rules of the street. It was like the rules of their world.
Right.
Do you agree? Part 2 is, do you agree that these rules exist? I think in certain cultures they do. In certain communities.
Yeah, I grew up in California, and there was a lot of gangs around where I was growing up, and
Really?
I could, thank God I didn't get involved in anything like that, but I knew a lot of people, and I could see those rules, you know, in a realistic situation, you know, realistically, you know, I can see that definitely.
Yeah. Wow.
I've never had experience with gangs or anything, obviously, but like I could see coming from an element of like survival of the fittest. Like I feel like these rules definitely make sense, especially like in terms of like presenting yourself as strong and masculine and not weak, and yeah, just really surviving.
Right. And I would think too, once you follow the rules, I mean, you just get caught up in that vicious cycle, and it will never stop.
Right.
Obviously.
The gang life becomes family, and these rules kind of fit right in with that, you know. You got, like you said, Brittany, we got a Bethany, we show a tough exterior, you know, we don't cry, you know, we don't do this. Only the women crying and such. And then you know, of course we don't tell, you know. I think there was one part of the book talking about Tony where he says, you know, badge, when you're talking to a badge, you know.
Yeah,
you know,
he wasn't snitching. He was being loyal.
Yeah, he was just being loyal. He wasn't snitching, and he didn't break any rules because he wasn't talking to law enforcement.
That's really interesting how like family fits into the cycle in terms of like Will had lost the 2 main male figures in his life, the adults, and so seeking out family through gang activity, it again perpetuates the cycle. Like you lose your family, so you find your family, which you're continually losing family, kind of thing. I don't know if that makes sense.
No, it makes complete sense. It's a cycle. It's
But he wasn't, and I don't know, this might have been his foray into being into the gangs. I don't know, you know, but it was the rules being passed down, you know. Got him from Sean. Sean got him from Uncle Mark. Uncle Mark got him from, you know, Grandpa. And
that they've always been around. Like
that's
just,
you know, nobody knew how they came about to be. You know, they just there.
They don't question it.
Right.
Yes.
They don't. Yeah, they don't question where it's, you know, when they were established or the establishment of the rules. I mean, even from the, you know, the very first scene, all the women cried when Sean was shot.
That's part of the rules, you know.
Right.
Part of life.
All right. And then another part. I'm sorry, what, Steve?
You had more on that one?
No, there's 2 more parts to this question.
Okay.
What do you think? Oh, If so, can you remember how you learned about them? I'm not, okay. And then if they're not, were there any unspoken rules you follow instead? What do you think Will means when he writes, they weren't meant to be broken, they were meant for the broken to follow? Okay, so like obviously Will considers himself broken because his brother was murdered.
Right.
So the rules
Or do they
apply
all
to him.
consider themselves broken for the losses they've occurred?
I think so. That's when, yes.
And
That's the way
rules
I
provide a
interpret it.
structure. The
Mhm.
rules are providing a structure for them,
Yeah.
for the broken. you know.
Yeah,
It's like a life code.
right.
Mhm. Yeah, when you're broken, you're like you've broken off from the norm, and you need
Yeah.
something to kind of just anchor you
I
back.
didn't even think of it like that. That's such a good way to put it.
Yeah.
Broken off from the norm.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I love that
Yeah.
quote. All right. Do we want to rotate or do you want me?
Are we gonna go like in sequential order? Like,
So I have
3,
five.
5, 9.
You have what, 9, 10, 9,
Mhm.
and 19? Okay, I have 5, which is is that the anagram one?
yes.
Yeah, okay.
Oh, I love this part of the story. It's such an
Yeah,
interesting
it's
element.
poetic, huh?
Yeah.
So there were 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 5.5 anagrams in throughout the story, and they seem to kind of pop up as after Sean's death, of course, and Will has made up his mind. I'm gonna avenge. I got to do rule 3. I'm just following the rules. So he gets in the he's on the 8th floor. I believe he's on the 8th floor, and here he comes down. And I get to talk about timestamps later, so that's the next one.
Good question.
Yeah, that's a big part of the story. So I think we all hit parts that's gonna put everything together. I like it. He gave an example of canoe and oceans, and I just love words. I love word games, and so I thought how those two related, were kind of cool. And then he comes up with these and I see a change in his life. Obviously, there's been a big change because he lost his brother, and so the next one happens after he gets on the elevator, and Buck shows up on the elevator, and the anagram was alive equals a veil. And I thought that was pretty powerful in relation to Will, the protagonist, because here was life. I'm with my brother and with my family, and I've already lost my dad, but we worked through that. And now I'm on this elevator ride, and I'm going down, and but a veil is basically over his life. It's
pulling things back to see how they really are.
Yeah, and veils are murky, and he's not. Is he sure that it was Riggs? He's not sure, and then he gets questioned. As he's going down. Then this young lady comes on, and he has it was feel equals flee, and what was he going to do here? He didn't recognize her at first, and he then he remembers, and then he remembers he was there when she was shot, and what do I do? And she was being cool, and she was like, well, what you got that gun for? And she what are you going to do? You're going down, and what are you going to do? What you got that gun for? Why do you have that gun? And so he feels for his brother, but then he's like, I don't, what do I do? He's starting to question himself. Then comes Uncle Mark, and he has the anagram cool equals loco. So I guess that kind of typical of what Uncle Mark is. He wanted to, he was kind of fanciful in some ways and flamboyant, and he wanted, he had that camera, but he'd end up losing it, but he had that camera, movie ideas and such that falls into the next anagram, which is cinema equals Iceman. And it's still, to me, it's still showing Will is still conflicted. He's conflicted I'm going down this elevator, I'm meeting these folk, you know, and they're questioning me and I'm questioning myself. And the very last one is poser. And he says, I wish I had an anagram for that. And I really think he's being real self-reflective there. It's like, you know, what, you know,
What am I?
Yeah, what am I? I'm listening to all these dead talking. I like the way Reynolds, you know, used undead, dead, you know, do dead people must know, you know, and they know about the dead and blah blah, you know, and then it was kind of fun. And here he is on this elevator going down, and poser. I said, I wish I had an anagram for that one. He just didn't. He couldn't come up with an answer. You know, there are some anagrams for poser. You could do prose, you could do ropes, and there are some, but I like what the author did in leaving it blank, because it's just kind of this is where I'm at. I'm right here, you know. So that's what
I really like that you brought up like how he seems conflicted through the anagrams, because when I was reading the anagrams, like I was taking it I mean, you could probably see it both ways, but when he said like same letters, different words, somehow still make sense together like brothers. Like for me, the anagrams were almost like a way for him to like look at things in a different perspective, or seeing that things can be different if you rearrange things or look at it a different way. So I think that's really, I like how you brought up like it's more of like an internal conflict, like he's weighing two different sides of these anagrams. So
that's what struck me by what he did, by he being Reynolds, you know, canoe and ocean, you can see that, you know,
right,
they go together, but here,
but some of them are so opposing,
right?
like,
And that's what led me to look at it that way. You know, I'm like, huh, yeah,
right,
there's something going on here.
I like the way you process all that and view that, Bethany. I looked at them as conflict. I saw conflict in them, but then I wonder if then it makes you think, is that because I looked for conflict in them?
maybe.
I mean, do I see the conflict because that's like the first few when they were used, the first two, it was really doing a lot of conflict. So maybe I just continue to look for conflict in them.
Yeah, I guess it really depends on what vibe you're putting into the book as you're reading it. That's why I love it's so interactive. It's so much of your own experience.
And it's a sign of a good writer.
Yeah, very good writer.
When you know, different people can look at it and get different aspects of it. That's a great write. You know, when you could look at it, and because none of them are wrong. You know, they're just it's just all this stuff happening at one time. So
so good.
But you're still with this. We're all still with the same theme.
Right.
So yeah, it was great.
Number 9.
So I won't read the whole thing, but it talks about how throughout the novel Will uses figurative language, but my favorite like use of symbolism throughout this has been like when it'll just flash little vignettes, little scenes like throughout the plot. Like the example I like the most was, let me find it. I don't know if I bookmarked it or I wrote the page down. It's a little poem. It's random thought number 4. It's all his random thoughts throughout the book where he just like throws in these little memories that he has here and there, and you have to like figure out how it connects to the scene. So let's see, page 222. In this part of the story, it is when it's when his dad comes on the elevator and he's conflicted, he's feeling weird, he's feeling like, I don't really know this man, but I still love him. But if it's okay, I'd like to read random thought number 4. And it says, there's this thing I used to see kids at the playground do with their dads. They'd stand on their father's feet, the dads holding the kids by the arms, walking stiff-legged like zombies. The kids had to trust the fathers to guide them because the fathers could see what was coming, but the kids, holding tight to their dads, moved blindly backwards. That was like one of the most powerful symbols in the book for me. Just like thinking about the whole thing as it's intergenerational. It's something that gets passed on from father to son to children.
That's so true.
The trusting nature of the child to hold on to the dad, and the dad sees what's coming, and your dad is walking you into what's coming. And the fact that he said moved blindly backwards, like I feel like that's kind of Reynolds saying like the way we're going with gang violence is backwards. We are moving backwards. We are not making progress, but we're doing it because we are clinging to what our fathers did, what our fathers showed us.
Right, right.
Excellent point.
For
They're
me, that
standing on
was,
their fathers,
yeah,
clutching these rules.
right.
Yeah, that's
for
been
me,
passed down. Boop, 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 boop,
Right.
boop.
It gets passed
Yeah.
down. It's the cycle.
Yeah,
and it's
I
a
starred
cycle.
that page. That was I think the most profound symbolism in the book for me. But a couple of other ones were let's see, like how he had his gun as a tail, like depending on
too.
where the gun was or if it was hidden or not. And that's like how he was posturing, if he was feeling brave or faking bravery. And he went on to say on page 91 that the gun in his back felt like an extra vertebra, some more backbone. So I took that as he's acting tough, but he's not feeling tough. Like, again, back to the poser thing.
Yeah.
One other good one was when he was talking, this one hit deep, but when his mom was over his brother's body and he said she was standing like a dimmed light post. And to me, that read like his mother is like this bright human, and her light, her world is being dimmed because of what's happening around her. And that was also a pretty profound one. I don't know if there was any symbolism you guys liked in the book that you'd like to share, but obviously since it's poetry, most of it is symbolic, but I think he did a really good job with some of these.
He really did. Yeah, I agree.
Well, just you covered it beautifully. So just in respect for time, we're going to go on to what's the next 12, I think, with me?
Yes. Well,
10. 10 would be.
Shelley, I guess it's back to you.
10 is Shelley. Okay, perfect.
Okay. So how does Will plan to avenge his brother's death? Obviously, that he plans to go after who he thinks the killer was, which was Riggs.
Which he thinks was Riggs.
Was it Riggs? Right. Tony told him it's Riggs.
Yeah, right. So he plans on getting the gun from the middle drawer, his brother's gun, Sean's gun, and going after Riggs. In this moment, do you think he's doing the right thing? My initial thought was absolutely not. I mean, I'm big about that darn cycle continuing.
I guess it depends on who's measuring what's right. If they're following the rules, he was doing the right thing, but if he's trying to break out of the rules, he's definitely not doing the right thing.
Yeah. I also thought if he does go after Riggs and kills him,
who's next?
What's there to continue with?
Right. So Sean, I mean, Will might be the next one to
right. You know, if you go by the rules, then you'd be looking over your shoulder the rest of your life, you know.
What happened to Sean?
You just be so I kind of think those in the elevator are trying to help him see that, you know, in a measure, you know. It's like, hey, what, dude, you know, you might want to think this over.
Right.
Did y'all think at the moment he was doing the right thing with planning to go after Riggs, who he thought killed his brother?
If I apply my own life philosophy, no, I don't think that's a good idea. I think I'm far enough removed to see that it's just going to cause more conflict.
Right.
I was kind of right there with him. You know, I was just like, I was getting really into the character, into Will, and thinking, you know, well, this is a natural response for him in his situation. Yeah.
If someone killed my sister, I don't like. Actually, thinking about it now, it's like I don't know. I like in that situation, it would take a lot of restraint.
Yeah. That tests a lot of us for sure. It's a big test for sure. What do you do? What do you think, Shelley? You said you don't think he's doing the right thing? That's based on your.
No, but I also thought, how could Reynolds continue the book if you go? I mean, you can't just write a book about. I've got to come up with another word in quicksand cycle, but you can't. It's like, how could he write a book?
I think that's the point. I think he's trying to say, like, break the cycle.
Well, exactly.
Right.
And that's why he had to write it like this. Yeah, you know,
just to write about it continuing.
There's people out there, just like Will. You know, there's Wills everywhere.
Right.
And you know, I had he died of an accident, but one of our young, when I was from 5th to 6th grade, we lost one of our friends. But it was an accident. It wasn't, it wasn't anything that we would, try to plot, and say, oh, we got to get that guy. So, I'm finding in this atmosphere that we live in, where there's a lot of things that are happening that I have no clue. We have, I shared about my daughter, but my son has a friend and he's a good friend of the family. He sleep over and stuff, but he's transitioning to female. He's 22 now, and that's what he's doing. And I don't understand those things, but I just have to say to myself, that's that's got to be rough, and that has to be hard to think, well, I'm in the wrong body, and I gotta make some changes here. And so I have to have empathy, even though I don't understand. I just have to start there.
Yeah.
My son's, he's a great, I'm gonna call her now. She's a great
You're a good
person.
dad.
Yeah, she's fantastic, And
Is your son struggling with it?
no, they go to movies together, and and he
raised him good.
That's one thing about my son, and I'm going to get a little off topic here. He when it comes to friends, my son had his phone stolen one time at he was in track at that time, and somebody took it out of his bag. We were able to find the phone. I went to the house. I said, and I knew the dude. I didn't know that my son knew the dude. And so I went back to my son, and he said, "Well, Dad, that's my friend. I don't, I'm not gonna trip about it."
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
That was his answer.
That's a good kid.
He's something else.
Yeah.
He's Mr. Cool. But things in life, what Will's going through, I was just right there with him. I said, yeah, I probably would got my gun too, I'm there.
You
with
can see
Will.
where he's coming from.
Yeah.
Oh, most definitely.
Mhm.
Yeah. And that's his world. That's what he's been taught. That's what he's seen you do.
Right.
But what a great job Reynolds did, in addressing this issue. I thought he did a fantastic job.
Yeah.
Who's next? 12 is next. That's me, huh?
Yes.
Okay.
I like this part. This part confused me.
All right.
Timestamps.
Question.
Yeah, the use of timestamps throughout. So I got 2 pages of notes here. Hold on. So I was about 100 pages in before I realized that the time was not going by very fast in with these timestamps, even though there was a lot of dialogue going on, and him coming down the elevator, they kept pressing the loser, L. And I kept thinking, L, and that's what he was thinking, loser. It kept L. But each time things happened so fast. When the first timestamp came, page 78, was it? No, 74. Yeah, 74. It was like 9:08 and 2 seconds. And then the next one came 9:08 to 4 seconds. You had Buck and David already had long conversations. So what I was thinking was, when somebody you hear, thank God I haven't experienced this, when you hear about somebody, getting ready to die or something, or they're in a car accident, they see a car coming and they're it's going to hit them, and they say their life flashes before their eyes, and like all these scenes, I'm just like, oh, my mom and my son and my wife and everything, and I kind of look at the timestamps and the dialogue that happened, but how quickly it was happening is something akin to that. You know, Will is,
Okay, interesting.
this is a life decision Will's making, you know, he's coming down, and then he's got these people from his past coming into the situation, and giving him pause, and giving him, you know, he's having second thoughts. Did he, you know, and that was one of the things I was going to read, my little reading part. 290, excuse me. I got the wrong one marked here. Oh,
Are you looking for the timestamps?
No, I'm gonna read a little something from the book. I think it kind of fits what I'm saying. At least I hope it does. This is when he met up with Sean toward the end. So I told him about the drawer, the gun, that I did like he told me, like Buck told him, like our grandfather told our uncle, like our uncle told our dad. I followed the rules, at least the first two. I hadn't cried, I hadn't snitched. Explained that I was on my way to take care of his killer, follow through with rule number 3. Told him I knew it was Riggs. I told him I thought it was Riggs. Then I told him I knew it was Riggs again. So the time stamps for me, and it all, it's just this big conflicted moment, and all these things happening as he's coming down, you know, and I thought it was well done by him. Everything about this book I really liked. You know,
I also kind of interpreted it as like life flashing before your eyes. And for me, that almost, based on what Will knows he's about to do, I feel like it also, like, it almost implies that he knows he might die himself because of this. So it's like I said, life flashing before your eyes, like all these people coming back to you. So I was on the same page with that, Steve.
Do you think Will was kind of resolved to the fact that this might be it for him?
I don't know. I think from what Reynolds shows of like him breaking down several times and like trying to reassure himself he's doing the right thing, I think he knows that there's still questions. Like he's not. I think the end of the book itself is like indicative of like he's not ready to come. He's not ready to.
Oh, definitely. Well, I thought in the elevator there were several instances we saw, like the one with the gun, how the gun, you know, was his vertebrae and it gave him strength and support. He wasn't ready.
No, he was just a kid.
Ready at all.
And I mean, a lot of them are all just kids, but I think that's what he was trying to show, like loss of innocence here. This is a child.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
We have these rules to follow, and so
right.
And I love the use of the ghost. I love the way Stephen used the ghost.
Yeah.
And it all, brought it all together.
Right. Ready for last question, or do you think we're going to have enough time to move into talking about the chapter still?
Oh no, we'll have plenty of time for the chapter. Yeah. It was pretty cut and dry. I only got like 2 pages of notes on that.
Yeah,
I have some interesting things to say about that, but I'll get there when we get there.
Okay.
Yeah, because followed up with the rules. That's what I wanted to hear.
Yes. All right. The last words in this book are a question. How do you think Will answers this question, and where do you think Will will be 5 years at the end of this book?
Yeah, we cannot not answer this question, discuss this question.
I wanted to go off. I want to be tangential because the ending just like hit me. Like that came out of nowhere. Like I was almost a little disappointed. Like I'm the type of person who I like everything tied up in a nice bow. I like a resolution, and then I feel good at the end of the book. Yay. But like, I feel like the way he ended it was so symbolic in itself of like, you lose someone to gun violence, there is no like resolution. There's no going back and fixing it. There's no going back and being happy about it. Like that's where like the revenge aspect comes in. But I don't know, just the fact that it's just over, boom, that's it. I feel like that's symbolic in itself, as well as it like, it makes you as a reader come up with your own ending to like, just to finish the story yourself. And I think that's good because it like, it forces you to think about these issues in order to finish the story, in order to finish other people's stories. So I thought his use of just cutting the book off like that was amazing. If Will is anything like Jason Reynolds, I think he will choose to do the right thing and walk away. And where will he be in 5 years? I don't know. I maybe writing like Reynolds is, because I feel like it's this character's a little bit of him in a story, but that's my best guess.
Yeah, he might be the one trying to tell others, you don't. Yeah, we got these rules, but you don't have to really follow them.
You don't have to follow them.
Yeah.
Right.
Are you coming? You coming? Are you gonna make the choice? What you gonna do? What are
You
you
ready
doing
to be
here?
dead? Yeah.
You want to keep here? We're all dead, and we're leaving out. Are you gonna follow us?
You gonna be one of us.
So profound.
Are you gonna do that? Yeah, it was brilliant. Brilliant.
Yeah, I love the way he ended it.
I remember closing the book and just like looking off in his face, like, huh.
Yeah.
It made the book stay with you.
It did. It really did.
I think it was a brilliantly written book. And I gotta say, in the beginning of the class, I was like, oh, we have to read these books. How are we going to read these books? I have really gotten so much out of each of these books.
For sure.
I was happy when I saw this book, this big thick book. I said, "Oh,
I'm like, there's no way I can read this." But it's
what in the world can this leave us with? How can we get anything out of this? But
it was fantastic.
It was brilliantly written. Very strong message. Great book.
All right, chapter time.
My chapter notes.
So do you have any other notes? Anybody else? Any more comments? Or
Get
we
good?
I think I'm good. That was a good book.
So back to, I think you briefly hit on this. I think this is a great book for middle school literature.
Yes.
Yeah. And I did not view it as a violent book. It was about violence.
It had violence, but it wasn't like profane, wasn't shock violence.
No. Yes. There was nothing gratuitous. And the chapter gets into, asked that question pretty much right up front, is there a need for violence in children's books? And the way that this particular book, Long Way Down, I didn't really, oh God, how can I say it? I didn't, and I wanted to ask you two this question, because I know our chapter today, it really talks about how kids are influenced, or we're influenced by what we see, influenced by what they read. I just remember as a young person reading like the fairy tales and going, okay, that just wolf,
that person just got eaten, it's normal, it's fine.
Wow, okay.
You didn't think twice about it.
What's the next story? It didn't really like shock, wow, how can they do that? I'm same, you're shaking your head. It kind of
like it's just kind of, that was kind of commonplace in fairy tales. I was never.
Books didn't, it was nice when you read about a book that, about another country and stuff, or somebody having an adventure. But when it came to the violence and stuff, it didn't make me want to go out, do something.
But I think, and then you can turn that the other way, like, the big bad wolf. I'm sure y'all do you felt Little Red Riding Hood's emotion as she was, everything was going on, but it was like, it happened. So the big bad wolf, the violence, it happened, and it really didn't faze us.
Right.
And I think that's what's happened with kids. We just assumed that's okay. That was, we knew the big bad wolf didn't really exist and eat, whatever. But it's like kids just assume today that all this violence is okay.
Yeah. Little desensitized.
Yes. Desensitized. They're just not really affected by it.
So that was like the first question in the chapter. What are the consequences of the permeation of violence in every walk of life? TV, games, media. It's a different world we live in. Obviously, you have kids who can't even talk yet are using the phone. They have the phone in their hands, with the two thumbs on them. I'm like, what? It's so different, and there's so much violence is just, so commonplace
Mhm.
in our media, in our on TV, movies and such. So what about children's books? What do we think?
The one thing I did take away from this chapter is that in literature for children, there are times where violence is needed in books to retell history, such as, the Holocaust or the Civil Rights Movement, to
Mhm.
explain why people feel the way they do, why certain cultures are where they are today. I think there is violence needed in literature in that aspect.
This definitely can't be ignored.
Right, it can't be ignored because you can't really explain the civil rights movement and why certain cultures are where they are today, like
If
the
you water it
Holocaust and
down
the
to
Civil
something
War.
that's not what it actually was.
Right, it's not effective.
Mhm.
It won't respectfully and duly explain why this culture,
Mhm.
as a whole, why they think the way they do, why they have these thoughts, these values, their beliefs. We need, there has to be some violence involved to, I guess, like to get the point across.
Right.
Well, it does open the door, Shelley, I believe. I agree. It opens the door for a conversation.
Mhm.
know,
And that
That's
yes,
why I
which
think
is
it's important in different contexts.
Mhm.
right. Every chapter we've been through, the topics open the door for conversations that need to take place,
Mhm.
whether it's at home or with another adult or
Yeah, there was a quote
anyone.
that said, "Literature serves to explain the human condition."
Yes.
And I just like that because it's like a
Right.
way for kids, like with the fairy tales, it was a way for kids to process their own morality and seeing like good over bad type thing. But it's also a way for kids to see themselves represented in ways that they've struggled, I guess. Like when they were
Yeah,
talking about
like-
Hurricane Katrina, like seeing
Yeah.
experiences of other
Yeah,
children who
Oklahoma
Right,
City.
it can help prepare them. It's,
like they coped through this, so I can cope through this kind of thing.
right. Was that the
It's,
quote for page 132 you just read?
let me see.
Part of that one?
I have the book online, so I don't have the pages.
Oh,
Yeah.
no
Oh,
worries.
do you?
I think
See,
Yeah,
mine,
I actually I prefer reading it online because it's just, they don't put a lot of words on each page. It's nice.
and then you can search for specific words.
Yeah, I can just go right through.
Okay, yeah,
That part of the quote was from 127. It's in the block quote in the middle.
okay.
Mhm.
Okay, because
But
there was another
just
quote.
questioning if violence is justified in children's books.
Okay.
I feel like it's really age dependent.
Yeah, they may not, there was another quote in there, it may not be appropriate for all learners. And like the one, and I do like the way the author includes the books, on the titles. And I didn't really realize till this one that there's a little synopsis of just about every book in the end of the chapter. So shame on me for that. Sorry, Dr. O, if you're listening. All right.
It's helpful. It is helpful.
It is helpful. But the point, I think, is that there may be people struggling, and I've often heard it said, well, I never knew anybody else was going through this, until I read this or till I heard this, and it
Right.
was helpful. It's helpful. So I think, wow. So I think that can be a way of justifying violence,
Right.
The way Reynolds did it was just perfect. It was just perfect because you could talk about it, and because that's a lot, as I said, that's a lot of real aspects. A lot of gang people think that, don't cry, don't snitch, and you do go take revenge, you're a homie,
And it's like you see the violence happen, but then you see what happens because of the violence because you're in Will's brain. I feel like with like movies, TV, video games, you just see the violence and that's it. But like within the character, you see
There's no meaning to
process.
it. It's right.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Right. There's no meaning to it.
That's an excellent point. That's right. Yeah. Excellent point. All right. So go ahead.
Sorry, go ahead.
No.
I was just I had made a note that sometimes books with violent subject matter use that as like a way to call for peace, which can also be, I think, a positive aspect. There's a few ways that it's justified. It's just like you have to be classy about it in a way.
Well, you just don't make it about the violence. I mean, like this book, he did an amazing job. It was about violence. how many times did he mention blood? Maybe 3 times.
Yeah, not that
I
much.
mean, the
And
point
not
was
in like a glorified
beautiful.
way. It was
No,
more in like a
exactly.
scary, like
Glorified is a
this is
beautiful word. Beautiful
traumatic.
word. Right.
Yeah,
Which is
the
what all
holes,
these.
look at these holes in my body, you know, you can
Yes.
feel
Yeah.
his finger in there, you know, he's
Yeah,
got his
that
fingerprints
was
here.
profound.
Yeah.
But it
Mhm.
wasn't in a glorified way. I mean, it was all it had meaning. It tied
Mhm.
to the depth of the book.
It has to have meaning. Yeah.
Yes, there's another quote I read. These stories that stood out to me are told to provide it's talking about violence in literature. These stories are told to provide a deeper, clearer understanding of the events of the past, kind of circles back around, and how those events have affected the present. Because of this, violence is justified in certain books.
Because why would you take active steps to prevent something from happening if you don't know how bad it is? Like,
Right.
I think that's the whole point of like why we have to learn history so we don't repeat it. I always thought that was a cliche until this course, but like now I'm starting to understand why.
Absolutely.
Yeah. That we got a lot of that violence out of in the first book we read, right? Words on Fire. Yeah. Yeah. There was
Genocide.
Yeah, genocide and yeah. Okay, so what about illustrations? It says talk about the impact of illustrations on children, what message is being sent. Again, that as I looked up why we have ratings on movies, and and it's the first thing they said is it allows parents who know more about the sensibilities and sensitivities of their kids to judge whether this would be appropriate for little Janie, but or this may not be appropriate for little Janie, so we're not going to go see this movie, So what about illustrations in books?
I couldn't think of like a book that I've read with violent illustrations in it, or like I don't think as a child I ever read anything about, I don't want to say negative topics, but like violent topics.
Violent, yeah. I think again, if it's used for shock value, there's no purpose in it. I can't. I find that hard to justify.
Right.
Yeah, I agree.
I find it hard to wrap my head around a children's book with violent images in it. Yeah. I should like Google something to see, but I feel like that wouldn't really make it on the shelf anyways.
I don't know. It might be one of those banned books.
Yeah,
maybe.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of steps to counter violence in the media. Oh, I have a lot of notes on that. 1 second.
Have you guys ever been on commonsensemedia.com?
I have not.
It's like it's kind of like what you were saying, Steve, in terms of
writing it down.
It was in our textbook. Actually, let me see. I'll pull it up. Common Sense Media. It's like a way for parents to look up.
Okay.
It's age-based media reviews here. Let me share my screen with you. Okay. Oh, just kidding. I can't do that. But anyways, it lets you put in how old your kid is, and then you get personalized recommendations. But then you can like click on a movie. Like, let's see, Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny, recommended for ages 12 and up. And then it talks about positive messages, diverse representations, sex, romance, nudity, products and purchases, positive role models, violence and scariness, language, drugs, drinking, smoking. So it covers like a bunch of different topics throughout the movie, and it's very detailed in terms of like, this happens, this happens, this happens. So it can be a good tool for finding a movie, but also I think it's a good tool for like knowing what you're going into so you can talk to your kid afterwards or something like questionable.
Common Sense Media. Perfect.
Yes. Good
I think in today's world, we just have to communicate so much more with kids, with students. I mean, with our own children, but I mean with students.
Right. I liked that our textbook talked about it's good to use literature as a supplement to like textbook learning, because textbooks can be kind of vague in terms of actual events that happened. I feel like literature is a good like jumping off point for making you think deeper and empathize more with what the people felt at that time.
I agree. That's a good point. They can, take it deeper and just put more of a human side to it. As
Yeah,
opposed to just reading. I think lots of textbooks tend to be more factual.
right. It's
Whereas
like
if
this
you
many people
can-
died, this is where it happened, and this was the result. Like,
Right.
but like
right.
when you read about someone's account, you feel differently about it.
Right. Right. It
Mhm.
makes it personal. I think it allows us to think deeper and more critical about it.
Are they reading more these days though? I mean, is this with the way the media is now and these video games and
Probably not.
yeah,
I mean, kids still read, but
Questions, Dave.
as they get older, you think the majority are reading less?
Oh, I agree.
I mean,
reading
it's
less
hard.
for especially.
It was hard to read in high school and then kind of during college just because there's already so much assigned reading. But that's one thing I really enjoyed about being graduated and stuff, because I have more personal time to sit down and read. So
Yeah.
it might just be an age thing. I don't know.
I think, and there are a lot of studies about this with kids as far as they read. If they grow up in a home where they see mom or whatever their parental, mom, dad, whatever,
Mhm.
reading, then it becomes a natural thing for them.
Yeah,
Yeah,
all my
for
kids are
sure.
readers. All mine are
I'm sure they
readers.
are. I'm
Are
sure
they?
they are.
Yeah.
And my little son used to, before he could talk, he would waddle up with a book, get on my lap, and just tap the books.
Oh,
Read this,
that's
you know.
awesome.
And he
What a
orders books online. He's always reading.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so he picks
We're in my
What a gift.
library. That's it.
my little library.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just love a good story. Once I pick it up, it's just like,
Mhm.
okay, I gotta finish this.
I'd
So,
rather read than watch a movie. I can't focus on a movie, but I can focus on a book
Absolutely. But
the
I
books are
will
usually
say,
better than the movie anyway, aren't they?
most of the time.
Yeah.
I like to hold the book.
Yes.
I don't do the Kindle or.
I've tried. In a pinch, it'll do.
Okay. So Steve, do you feel, I mean, obviously you get as much out of these, this book reading
Mhm.
online as opposed to the old fashioned way of holding. I just like to hold
The
the book. I like to
old-fashioned
feel
way.
it. I like everything about it. I like to
Yeah.
annotate and have my own book to highlight.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Yeah, I
you
like
know, it
writing it.
depends. It depends. Some of the reading that they give us is it's just small, right? It's small writing, and I'm online and I'm like,
Right.
it's
You
just,
can
it's
zoom
just like,
in.
it just overwhelms me, and so I like the way Reynolds did his book. I like,
Yeah.
space it out some.
Mhm.
So, yeah, but we're getting a little off here. Let's get back. Can you convince
Sorry.
readers to find peaceful ways to resolve conflict?
Can I share a
like,
quote?
yeah,
Yes, please do.
Let's see, it's on page 140. Before I do that, I want to say I feel like this chapter was not as polished as the other ones. I don't know if that makes sense, but I feel like the previous chapters we read were more like, this is the research indicating this. And I don't know. I feel like this chapter had a lot more like.
Yeah, that's a good observation. She really didn't get into it.
I'm not complaining about it. It just felt like
No.
almost not as polished. Anyways,
To me, there wasn't a whole lot of depth to this chapter.
Yeah, it was very. I kept repeating the same things over and over for each section. I kind of felt like filler.
I felt like it didn't really make me think on a deep level as compared to the other ones, and I did not have any really aha moments.
Same.
So I agree with that. I agree with that.
I don't think she was so much into it. She just kind of felt it was maybe just a necessary topic, but I'm not a big fan. Just whatever.
That being said, this part,
you had a quote on page 140.
Yeah, this part was, I feel like, one of the most poignant parts of the book. It says, the best teaching for children is to help them think for themselves. We give them tools so that they can think about things and then make conscious decisions after analyzing critical issues.
Yep.
We give them experiences so they can think about things and then take action. And I feel like that's the premise of everything we're doing here. Like, give the kid the information, have a discussion about it, and then the kid can make their own decision. So I thought that was very important quote in this whole book, hiding in this flimsy chapter.
Right. That's a great.
That was right at the end, though, wasn't it? Because I think I wrote that quote down.
It was the very end, Steve.
Yeah,
way to-
Very end. Yeah.
Yeah. So
I wonder if do you think there's a children's book about like school shootings? Because
Yes, they talked about it in here.
ways to
one-
like dialogue and using books as dialogue, but then that got me curious.
Yes, they mentioned there's one about the Oklahoma shooting.
the
Oh, I
bombing.
meant more
I
like
mean, the
ones that happened in
Oklahoma
schools.
bombing. Didn't I read that?
You know
Yes,
what?
about
She
the
didn't
OKC
really
bombing.
talk about school shootings in the
Yeah,
chapter.
this
Well, they're
hasn't,
saying
but I
it
feel
would
like
have
that's
helped to have had a book about
Right,
school
right.
bombings.
yeah.
I think comparing it to the book about Katrina, Hurricane Katrina,
Mhm.
reading literature like that, kids can learn what to do if they're in that situation, or
Right,
they can
and
at
that they're
least
not alone.
know
People
that
have
it's a
gone through it.
reality. These things do happen.
Mm-hmm.
That might be kind of it's that's almost, what the best metaphor is. You have to tiptoe real carefully,
Right.
with that, because
Mhm.
oh my, I remember that one, gosh, the one here on the East Coast, a few years back. I think Obama was still in
Sandy
president.
Hook.
Yeah, still the president. Yeah.
Yeah.
That was a rough one, but it
Mhm.
brought the community together. I mean, I remember them all, the picture of them all in the church, all these different faiths and such, but they were there for their
Right.
kids, and
Right.
so
Is that something you should talk about with elementary age kids, or is that just going to scare them? Like, what
yeah,
They
they might not
What
want
do
to
you
come to
do?
school. I don't want to go to school, mommy.
Yeah,
I
they
wouldn't.
have
I
that.
would be
Parents,
terrified
it's
as a
part of the
child.
world. They hear it on the news. They hear their parents talk about
They're
it.
going to hear it from somewhere.
I
You're right.
think it's our job to have that discussion.
I don't know
with
about
children and
elementary,
students.
but because I still feel the parents. Oh, my battery's going down. Let me get a plug.
Sure.
The parents are I still think they're the best ones to know what's right for their kids.
True. I mean, we do code red drills. Kids always ask what they're about, and I kind of just skate around and be like, well, if there's someone bad in the building, we have to hide
Right.
from them.
Right, just in case we have to know what to do.
Right.
Yeah. And you can present it in a way where it makes them feel safer. It makes them, they don't fully process it,
Right.
but I would think it would make them feel a little more secure. Okay.
That's
Right.
one of the rules, right? We got to have that
Yeah.
rules.
Yes. One
And
of our
again, if they go
rules.
home and talk to mom and dad, again, it's giving them the information, the knowledge. They can
Right.
go home and talk to mom or dad, or whoever their figure is at home about it. What they did today, they went on a code red or whatever our school systems, they all call it
Do
something.
you guys do that in upper grades?
We do.
Oh God, yes, yeah.
We
Oh,
do.
gotcha. I
Yeah,
can't
we
remember
have
doing
the,
one in high school, but I might have just blocked it out.
Active shooter in the building
Yeah.
type
Yeah.
of thing. Yeah, we do
We're
that.
required to do them, like one or two of some. We're
Mhm.
broke up into just 2 semesters, of course. Yeah, we're required to do a certain amount every semester.
So it's like students already know that it's a possibility. I guess
Yeah.
it's better to be knowledgeable and prepared than to pretend it doesn't happen.
Yeah.
Right. So apparently there are some books about school shootings. One's called Aftermath by Kelly Armstrong. Aftermath is a good option when it comes to books about school shootings. It's a good thing to be able to read from the point of view of someone who is related to the shooter. Oh wow.
Mm-mm.
Makes you
That's gotta
realize
be rough.
that you still need to treat them with kindness. So it's about 3 years after losing her brother Luca in a school shooting. Sky Gilchrist is moving home. There's no
Mhm.
sympathy for Sky and her family because Luca wasn't a victim, he was a shooter. Oh, okay. So it's from that point of view. But there are some. There's some.
Yeah, I'm looking at, there's
Yeah.
one called A Kid's
Yeah.
Book About School Shootings. Does not look like it's a real picture book, but it's just
I think that's something you have to,
Words.
an avenue you have to tiptoe down and really look into the
Mhm.
piece of literature before you present it or put it in your library.
I thought it was interesting. She talked about at one point that like assigning books that talk about gun violence, it might be smarter to do as summer reading so the kids have a choice. But like part of me feels like
Oh, I
shouldn't
don't.
have we have done that with the sexuality thing too? Because I feel like that's also something that you shouldn't really
Yeah.
like force because parents might get mad about it. So I just thought that was an
Mhm.
interesting tidbit.
I think if you're going to sign a book like that, you need to have an intelligent, grounded discussion.
For sure. For
Make
sure.
sure it stays in perspective. And what are we really learning? What's the purpose of reading about this?
Right.
Instead of
So-
just sending kids off on their own to do it.
Yeah, and it gets to the point of the author too, that we as parents need to know what's in these books. We need to know the book.
Right.
Is it a book like Jason's where it can actually help start a good conversation about,
Or is it just a gore fest?
yeah, is it, or
Right.
yeah, there's just a
Right.
lot of gratuitous sex and gore and whatever.
I
Can
think
it be used to, one last quote here, it said, can it be used to convince readers to find peaceful ways to resolve conflicts? And is that type of book, where it could actually help us. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, Brittany.
no, you're totally good.
Definitely.
I wanted to look up Long Way Down on Common Sense Media. It says ages 12 and up.
12 and up. That sounds.
Yeah.
Yeah. That sounds right.
It's
to me.
got good reviews on this website. But it goes into like violence and scariness. Blah, blah. Anyways, you can look up books on there too, and I think that would be a good way for parents to get a better.
Yeah, I jotted that down. I'm
of
glad you brought that up. So
what the kids
this
are
was
reading.
you learned about common sense in this book?
Yeah, I
One
think
of
it
the-
was under where there was a part about how can teachers or parents or caretakers like prepare or know about what their kids are reading, or steps to counter violence in the
Violence in the media.
Common Sense
Yeah, there's
Media.
like one.
Okay.
Oh yeah, I got it right there too. Darn it, it's right there. I put it in my notes. Okay.
Check it out. It's a good website.
Kids in Mind. And yeah, there's like about 6 of them. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yeah, 6 different websites.
Mhm.
Good. I think that's a good way to end it, guys.
Excellent. Yes.
We've
Yes.
got our time.
Wrapped
Alright.
up.
So
It's a good
next
time.
week is going to be Shelley. Yeah,
Yes.
That will be me.
and
Yes.
is that Refugee?
And let's see.
It should be refugee and like war and terrorism is the
War,
theme.
terrorism, justice, and freedom.
Okay, I'm sure she'll have a lot to say about that.
I'll be ready. Okay, so Thursday now, Bethany, our other
Do you
group
want
is
to
what
stop the
time?
recording before we add
Oh, I thought we
extra
did.
time?
Hold on one second. Yeah. Stop.